Welcome to Life Stories, where we share inspiring tales that remind us of the power of kindness, resilience, and hope. Today's story begins with a struggling single father named John, who stopped to help a stranger on the side of the road. Little did he know that one simple act of kindness would spark a journey that would transform not only his life but the lives of countless others in his community. Join us as we explore the ripple effect of compassion and how one moment can change everything. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories to start today's journey. What if a single act of kindness could change not just one life but many? What if stopping to help a stranger on the side of the road set off a chain of events so profound that it transformed an entire community? This story is one of resilience, hope, and the undeniable power of human connection. It begins with John, a father who had long since learned to survive on the bare minimum. His days were a relentless grind, rising before dawn in his cramped apartment in Chicago to prepare his kids, Jake and Lily, for their day. The air in their tiny home was often filled with the soft hum of cartoons and the scent of whatever simple breakfast John managed to whip up. Most mornings, it was toast, a predictable, slightly burnt staple that his children had come to expect. "Dad, why is the toast black again?" Jake would tease, his hair an uncombed mess, his smile bright despite the early hour. John would ruffle his son's hair with a laugh. "It's not burnt, Jake. It's gourmet. Extra crispy. Just how you like it." Jake would roll his eyes, while 4-year-old Lily, always full of sweetness, would ask, "Can I have pancakes today, Daddy?" John's smile would falter just slightly before he crouched to her level. "Not today, sweetheart. But I promise we'll have pancakes soon." It wasn't that he didn't want to spoil them. It was simply a matter of stretching his paycheck far enough to cover the rent, groceries, and their ever-growing list of needs. Life had not been kind to John. 2 years ago, a sudden accident had taken his wife from him, leaving him not only grieving but grappling with the weight of single parenthood. His world had been reduced to making ends meet, one delivery at a time, while trying to be both mother and father to his children. One particularly exhausting evening, as the sun cast its golden glow over Lincoln Park, John found himself driving home after another grueling day. His mind churned with worry. Bills were piling up. Jake's school trip was around the corner, and Lily had been talking non-stop about needing new art supplies. That was when he saw her, a woman standing by a sleek black sedan, parked awkwardly on the shoulder of the road. Her tailored blazer and pencil skirt, paired with a faintly exasperated expression, told John that she was far removed from the kind of exhaustion he carried. She looked like someone whose problems had solutions, yet there was something in her stance, a subtle slump in her shoulders, that tugged at him. He hesitated. His first instinct was to keep driving. He was bone-tired, and his kids were waiting. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way her arms crossed tightly against her body or the smudge of grease on her fingers. "Looks like you've got a flat," he called out as he pulled over, his voice warm but weary. She turned toward him, relief flickering across her face. "Yes," she said, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "I noticed it about half a mile back. I thought I could make it home. But here I am." "Do you have a spare?" John asked. "In the trunk, I think," she replied, sounding unsure. He nodded and got to work, retrieving her spare tire and jack. As he knelt by the car, the woman stood nearby, watching him work with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. "Thank you for stopping," she said after a moment. "I wasn't sure anyone would." John glanced up briefly, offering a small smile. "These things always seem to happen at the worst times, don't they?" She laughed softly, the sound genuine and light. "That's putting it mildly. I've had back-to-back meetings all day, and this was definitely not on the schedule." "Busy day, huh?" he asked, keeping his focus on the lug nuts. "You could say that," she replied, hesitating before adding, "I run a non-profit. We're finalizing plans for a new project. And it's been hectic." John didn't press further. She struck him as someone used to solving her own problems. And he respected that. Within a few minutes, he had replaced the tire and stood, brushing his hands on his worn jeans. "There you go. Should be good as new," he said, stepping back. Her smile widened. "Thank you so much. I don't even know how to repay you." "No need," he replied, shaking his head. Helping someone shouldn't come with a price tag. Her expression softened. Her gaze steady. "That's rare these days. Most people don't stop, let alone refuse payment." John shrugged, feeling a little self-conscious. "It's just the right thing to do." She studied him for a moment, as if piecing together a puzzle. "What's your name?" "John," he replied simply. "Well, John. I'm Emma," she said, extending her hand. "I really do appreciate this." He shook her hand, surprised by the firmness of her grip. It spoke of confidence and authority, yet her tone remained warm and genuine. Before she left, Emma reached into her bag and handed him a sleek business card. "If you ever need anything, or if you're just curious about the work we do, give me a call." John accepted the card, glancing at the embossed logo, Bright Horizons Foundation. Beneath it was her name and title, Emma Clark, CEO. As she drove away, her words lingered in his mind. For the first time in a long while, John felt noticed. Like he wasn't just another invisible figure on the margins of life. He had no idea that this small act of kindness would become the start of something extraordinary. That night, after settling Jake and Lily into bed, John sat on the couch, the apartment quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. His mind wandered back to the moment Emma handed him her card. He fished it out of his pocket, running his fingers over the embossed text. Bright Horizons Foundation. He knew little about non-profits, but the name alone suggested a kind of hope he hadn't allowed himself to imagine in years. Setting the card aside, he sighed and stared at the unopened envelope on the kitchen counter. The landlord's letter loomed like a shadow over his thoughts, a constant reminder of how fragile his situation was. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his reverie. The number on the screen was unfamiliar. Hesitating for a moment, he answered cautiously. "Hello, John. It's Emma Clark," came a warm, familiar voice. John straightened instinctively. "Oh, hi, Emma. How are you?" "I'm doing well. Thanks to you," she replied, her tone light. "I wanted to call and thank you again for helping me. Honestly, you saved my day." "It was nothing," John said, feeling a little awkward under her gratitude. "I'm glad I could help." "Well, it wasn't nothing to me," Emma said firmly. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. I'd like to invite you to an event my organization is hosting this weekend. It's a gathering for single parents and families we've supported through our programs. We'll share stories, connect, and talk about the work we're doing." John hesitated. He could almost picture the event, polished, confident people in business casual attire mingling over hors d'oeuvres. It wasn't his world. "I'm not sure I'd fit in at something like that," he said, his voice hesitant. Emma's voice softened. "John, this isn't about fitting in. It's about connection. From what little you shared with me, I can tell you've got a story worth hearing. I think you might find some inspiration, too." He glanced toward the living room, where Jake's latest crayon drawing was taped to the wall. It depicted the three of them at a park, holding hands. His kids deserved better, he thought. Maybe this was a step toward something better. "I don't know," John murmured, still uncertain. "You don't need to bring anything or prepare anything," Emma added gently. "Just come as you are. Bring your kids if you'd like, it's a family-friendly event." That caught his attention. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "Fair enough," Emma replied. "I've sent you the details by email. No pressure, John. But I'd love to see you there." After they hung up, John stared at his phone, the weight of her invitation pressing against his usual doubts. The email was there, as promised, detailing the event at a community center downtown. Saturday afternoon. Casual attire. Later that night, as he lay awake on the couch, John thought about what Emma had said. What if this event wasn't about him but about Jake and Lily? If the foundation could help families like his, maybe his kids could benefit in ways he couldn't yet see. The next morning, as he poured cereal for breakfast, he broached the subject with Jake. "Hey, bud. What do you think about going to an event this weekend? It's for families like ours." Jake looked up from his bowl, milk dripping from his chin. "Like ours? What do you mean?" "Well, it's for single parents and their kids," John explained. "A chance to meet other families and maybe have some fun." Jake considered this, his young face thoughtful. "Will there be other kids to play with?" "I think so," John said, smiling. "And maybe snacks, too." Jake grinned. "Okay. I'm in. Can Lily come?" "Of course," John replied, glancing at Lily, who was busy making her stuffed bunny hop across the table. In the days leading up to the event, John's nerves built steadily. He debated backing out more than once. But every time he looked at Jake and Lily, he reminded himself why he needed to go. On Saturday, he dressed the kids in their best casual clothes and even managed to iron his own shirt. As they drove to the community center, the knot of anxiety in his chest tightened. What if he felt out of place, judged, or worse, ignored? When they arrived, the parking lot was bustling with families. Jake ran ahead, his energy infectious, while John lifted Lily from her car seat and held her hand tightly. Inside, the room was alive with chatter and laughter. The community center was brightly lit, decorated with colorful balloons and banners. John hesitated at the entrance, overwhelmed by the noise and the crowd. "Dad, come on," Jake called, tugging at his sleeve. "There are balloons." Before John could retreat, Emma appeared, weaving through the crowd with her usual poise. Her welcoming smile eased some of his tension. "John, you made it," she said, her eyes softening as she noticed Jake and Lily. "And you brought your little ones. I'm so glad you came." John nodded awkwardly. "Thanks for inviting us. I wasn't sure this was my kind of thing." Emma's smile widened. "It's exactly your kind of thing. Come on. Let me introduce you to some people." For the first time in a long time, John felt like he might belong somewhere. Emma led John and his children through the bustling room, pausing occasionally to greet families and volunteers. Each person she introduced seemed genuinely warm and welcoming, but John's nerves remained firmly in place. The chatter of the room felt like a hum in the background as he focused on keeping Jake and Lily close. One of the first people they met was a single mother named Sarah, who was standing near the snack table with her 3 children. Her face lit up as Emma introduced John. "John, this is Sarah. She's been with the foundation for a few years now," Emma said. Sarah extended a hand, her grip firm but friendly. "It's nice to meet you," she said. "Emma told me you've got a great story to share." John chuckled nervously, shaking her hand. "I don't know about great, but it's a story." Sarah smiled knowingly. "Well, if it's anything like mine, I'm sure it's one people need to hear. It's amazing what this place can do for families like ours." As Sarah spoke, her youngest tugged at her sleeve, and Jake, spotting the boy's toy car, eagerly joined in. Within moments, the children were on the floor, racing cars and giggling as though they'd known each other forever. "See," Emma said, nudging John lightly. "It's not so bad, is it?" John managed a smile, his shoulders loosening slightly. "I guess not." Over the next hour, John found himself opening up more than he expected. He met other single parents, each with their own struggles and triumphs, and listened to their stories. A father shared how the foundation had helped him secure affordable childcare, and a mother recounted her journey back to school with their support. For the first time, John felt less alone in his challenges. These people understood the weight he carried. The exhaustion of working endless hours while trying to be everything his kids needed. Their stories mirrored his own in ways that were both humbling and comforting. "John," Emma said after some time, leading him toward a quieter corner of the room. "There's something I want you to think about." He raised an eyebrow. "Curious. What's that?" Emma smiled gently. "Sharing your story tonight. You've already connected with so many people here. And I think your perspective could inspire others." John tensed immediately, shaking his head. "I don't know, Emma. I'm not much of a speaker. I wouldn't know what to say." "You don't need to prepare anything," she said, her voice steady but encouraging. "Just speak from the heart. People don't want perfection, John, they want honesty. And your honesty could mean more than you realize." He glanced across the room at Jake and Lily, who were now playing with a group of children near the snack table. Their laughter filled the air, carefree and light. A small part of him wanted to believe Emma was right. But the thought of standing in front of all these people made his chest tighten. "I'll think about it," he said finally, not wanting to disappoint her but unsure if he could find the courage. As the evening progressed, the crowd began to gather near the stage for the main event. Emma stepped up to the microphone, her confident voice carrying easily through the room. She welcomed everyone, speaking passionately about the Foundation's mission to support families and build a stronger community. "Tonight," she said, her gaze sweeping the audience, "I want to highlight the strength and resilience of the people who inspire us to keep going. One of those people is here with us tonight. John, would you mind coming up and sharing a bit of your story?" John froze as all eyes turned toward him. For a moment, he considered refusing. But then he saw Jake watching him from the front row. His son's wide, curious eyes were filled with admiration and hope. Taking a deep breath, John stood, his hands trembling slightly as he made his way to the stage. The applause was warm but felt distant, his heart pounding in his ears. As he took the microphone, he cleared his throat and began, his voice shaky. "Hi, everyone. My name is John. And, I didn't really plan on speaking tonight. Honestly, I wasn't even sure I belonged here." A soft chuckle rippled through the crowd, encouraging him to continue. "I'm a single dad," he said, glancing at Jake and Lily. "My wife passed away 2 years ago, and since then, it's just been the three of us. Some days, I feel like I'm doing okay. Other days, it feels like I'm barely holding it together." The room fell silent, his words hanging heavy in the air. "But I try," John continued, his voice growing steadier. "I wake up every day and do my best because my kids deserve that. They deserve a dad who doesn't give up, even when it feels impossible." When he finished, the room erupted into applause. John's face flushed, but he couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. Emma was clapping the loudest, her expression one of quiet pride. Afterward, people approached him to thank him for his honesty. A young father told John how much his words had resonated, and an older woman praised his courage. As the event wound down, John felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, he didn't feel invisible. He felt like he mattered. The night after the event, John sat alone at his kitchen table. The faint sounds of cartoons drifted in from the living room, where Jake and Lily were sprawled on the floor, completely engrossed. On the table before him lay a small pile of papers, bills, school forms, and the ever-present unopened envelope from the landlord. But tonight, something else rested there too, a stack of pamphlets from the Bright Horizons Foundation. They were filled with stories about families who had overcome seemingly insurmountable odds with the Foundation's help. John flipped through them slowly, his fingers tracing the glossy pages. Each story felt like a mirror of his own struggles. Yet each also carried a glimmer of hope. The people in these pamphlets weren't extraordinary in the traditional sense. They were parents like him, just trying to do right by their kids. His mind kept returning to the event. The applause, the warmth of the people who had thanked him for sharing his story, and, most of all, the way Jake and Lily had looked at him with pride. It had been a long time since he'd felt like a hero in their eyes. The buzz of his phone pulled him from his thoughts. The caller ID flashed Emma Clark. "Hi, Emma." John answered, his voice tentative. "Hi, John." Emma replied, her tone light but purposeful. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "No, not at all. The kids are winding down," John said, glancing toward the living room. "I wanted to thank you again for speaking at the event," Emma said. "You really made an impact. I've had so many people tell me how much your story meant to them." John felt his face heat. "I didn't think anyone would care that much. I'm just a dad trying to make it through each day. And that's exactly why it mattered," Emma said. "People see themselves in you, John. Your honesty gave them hope." John leaned back in his chair, letting her words sink in. "I guess I never thought of it that way. Well, I was also calling because I have an idea," Emma continued, her voice brightening. "I want to bring you on as a community ambassador for the foundation. You'd share your story at events, help connect with families like yours, and maybe even shape some of our programs. What do you think?" The question caught John off guard. Him? A community ambassador? It sounded like something far beyond his reach. But Emma's confidence in him was undeniable. "I don't know, Emma," he said hesitantly. "I'm not sure I'm cut out for that kind of thing. I'm just a delivery driver. I don't have experience with public speaking or, well, anything like this." "You have exactly what we need," Emma said firmly. "You're real, John. You understand what these families are going through because you've lived it. That's something no amount of training can teach." He glanced again at Jake and Lily. Could he do this? Could he step into a role where people look to him for inspiration and guidance? "I'll think about it," he said finally. "That's all I'm asking." Emma replied, "Take your time. And remember, you're not in this alone. We'll support you every step of the way." After they hung up, John sat in silence for a long time. His thoughts swirled with doubts and questions. Could he balance this with his job? With being a parent? Would he even be good at it? But beneath the uncertainty, there was a flicker of something else, hope. The idea of being part of something bigger than himself, of helping other families, was both terrifying and exhilarating. The next morning, Jake bounded into the kitchen as John was pouring cereal. "Dad," Jake said, his voice full of excitement, "are we going to do more of those events? I had so much fun." Lily, still clutching her stuffed bunny, nodded enthusiastically. "Me too, Daddy. The snacks were yummy." John laughed, ruffling Jake's hair. "We'll see, buddy. We'll see." As Jake and Lily's chatter filled the kitchen, John found himself smiling. For the first time in a long time, he felt like they were moving toward something better. Later that day, John reached into his pocket and pulled out Emma's business card. He stared at it for a moment, then dialed her number. "Emma," he said when she answered, his voice steady. "I've thought about it. Let's do this." The following weeks brought a whirlwind of changes for John. His days as a delivery driver remained the same, long hours and endless miles, but his evenings now had a purpose he never expected. With Emma's guidance, he began preparing to speak at more events, share his story, and help other families navigate the challenges he knew so well. At first, it was daunting. The thought of standing in front of a room full of strangers and bearing his vulnerabilities made his chest tighten. But Emma was patient. She met with him regularly, helping him organize his thoughts and reminding him of the power his story carried. "John," she said during one of their meetings, "you don't have to be perfect. People don't want a polished presentation. They want to hear the truth. That's what makes your story so powerful." John nodded, though his doubts lingered. "I just don't want to let anyone down," he admitted. Emma smiled warmly. "You won't. Just be yourself. The first event he spoke at as a community ambassador was smaller than the one Emma had invited him to originally. It was held at a neighborhood library, with a handful of families sitting in folding chairs arranged in a semicircle. Despite the intimate setting, John's nerves were overwhelming. He stood at the front of the room, his palms sweaty and his voice shaky as he introduced himself. "My name is John," he began, glancing nervously at the audience. I'm just a dad. A dad trying to figure things out. Like a lot of you." The small group watched him attentively, their expressions kind and encouraging. "I lost my wife 2 years ago," John continued, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "Since then, it's been me and my 2 kids, Jake and Lily. Some days, it feels like we're doing okay. Other days, not so much." He paused, taking a deep breath. "But the thing I've learned is that I'm not alone. None of us are. And that's why I'm here, to remind you that we can get through this together." When he finished, the room erupted into applause. John's face flushed, but he felt a flicker of pride. Afterward, a woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "Hearing your story, it makes me feel like I'm not the only one struggling." John nodded, his throat tightening with emotion. "You're not alone," he said softly. As the weeks went on, John found himself growing more confident in his role. He attended events across the city, from community centers to schools, each time connecting with families who were walking similar paths. At home, Jake and Lily noticed the change in him. "Dad, you're smiling more," Jake said one evening as they sat at the kitchen table. "Working on homework." "Am I?" John asked, surprised. Jake nodded. "Yeah. You don't look so tired all the time." John chuckled, reaching out to ruffle his son's hair. "Well, I guess I've got something to smile about." One evening, Emma called with exciting news. "John, we're opening a new family resource center," she said, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "It's going to be a place where families can access everything they need: childcare, job training, counseling, you name it. And I want you to be part of the planning team." John was stunned. "Me? Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Emma replied. "You've been out there, talking to families. You know what they need better than anyone. I can't think of a better person to help us shape this." John hesitated, the weight of the responsibility pressing on him. "I don't know if I'm ready for something like that." Emma's voice softened. "John, you've already shown that you're more than capable. Trust me, you've got this." After a moment of silence, John nodded. "Okay, I'm in." As he hung up the phone, a mix of nerves and excitement coursed through him. For the first time in years, he felt like his life was moving forward not just for himself, but for Jake and Lily as well. The resource center became John's focus over the next few months. He worked closely with Emma and the rest of the team, offering insights from his own experiences and the stories he'd heard from other families. And as the opening day drew closer, John couldn't help but feel a growing sense of pride. This wasn't just a job, it was a chance to make a real difference. The day of the resource center's grand opening dawned clear and bright, with a crispness in the air that signaled the early days of fall. John arrived early with Jake and Lily, eager to help with the final preparations. The building was bustling with volunteers, staff, and community members setting up balloons, arranging chairs, and laying out refreshments. The center itself was a marvel. Bright, cheerful walls framed rooms filled with possibilities: classrooms for job training, a play area for children, private spaces for counseling, and even a small library. To John, it felt like a beacon of hope, a place where families could come to rebuild and find strength. Jake and Lily darted around the lawn, their laughter ringing out as they helped carry small decorations and greeted the arriving families. John couldn't help but smile as he watched them, their excitement infectious. Emma found him near the entrance, adjusting his tie nervously. "You look ready," she said with a warm smile. I feel like I'm about to go on stage at a Broadway show. John joked, tugging at the neatly pressed shirt he rarely wore. Emma laughed softly. Don't overthink it. You're going to do great. Just speak from the heart. Like you always do. John nodded, her words easing some of the tension in his chest. He glanced back at the center, the building glowing in the morning sunlight. It's incredible, isn't it? What we've built here. Emma's gaze softened as she followed his line of sight. It is. And you've been such a huge part of it. John. This place wouldn't be the same without your voice. Your perspective. As the ceremony began, families gathered in front of the outdoor stage. Emma took the podium first, her voice confident yet full of warmth as she spoke about the Foundation's mission and the collaborative effort that had brought the resource center to life. This center is a testament to what happens when a community comes together, Emma said, her gaze sweeping the audience. It's a place where families can find support, resources, and hope. And today, I want to introduce someone who has been instrumental in making this dream a reality. She turned toward John, motioning for him to join her on stage. The crowd erupted into applause as John stepped forward, his heart pounding but his resolve steady. Taking the microphone, he paused to glance at Jake and Lily in the front row. Jake gave him an enthusiastic thumbs up, while Lily clutched her stuffed bunny tightly, her smile wide and encouraging. Hi, everyone, John began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. 2 years ago, I never could have imagined standing here. Back then, my life felt like it was falling apart. My wife had passed away, and I was left trying to figure out how to be a father, a provider, and everything else my kids needed. Most days, it felt impossible. The crowd fell silent, his words carrying a raw honesty that resonated deeply. But then I found this foundation, he continued. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone. I realized that there were people who understood, people who cared, and people who wanted to help. This center is the result of that care and that hope. It's a place where no one has to feel invisible, where kindness and community come together to lift each other up. As he finished, the audience rose to their feet, their applause thunderous and heartfelt. John's face flushed, but he couldn't stop the smile spreading across his face. He looked down at Jake and Lily, who were clapping the loudest, their pride shining brighter than any spotlight. After the speeches, the center's doors opened, and families began exploring its many features. John found himself surrounded by parents and children eager to share their excitement and gratitude. One mother approached him, her eyes glistening with tears. This place means everything to us, she said, clutching his hand. Thank you for being brave enough to share your story. It gave me the courage to ask for help. John nodded, his throat tight with emotion. That's what this place is for, he said softly. As the day wound down, Emma found John standing by the edge of the lawn, watching the sunset with a glass of sparkling cider in hand. You were incredible today, she said, her voice filled with pride. Thank you, John replied, his tone quiet but sincere. I still can't believe I'm part of something like this. Emma smiled, her eyes thoughtful. You're not just part of it, John. You're one of the reasons it exists. You've shown everyone what resilience and kindness can achieve. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Emma spoke again. I've been thinking about the future of the foundation, she said. And I want you to take on a leadership role. I believe in you, John. You have the heart and the vision to carry this mission forward. John turned to her, stunned. Emma, I don't know if I'm ready for something like that. You will be, she said confidently, and I'll be here to guide you every step of the way. As the sun dipped below the horizon, John felt a quiet resolve settle within him. For the first time, his future didn't feel uncertain. It felt full of possibilities, not just for him, but for everyone this center would touch. As the weeks turned into months, the Bright Horizons Family Resource Center became a lifeline for countless families. A beacon of hope in the heart of the community. John embraced his new role with determination, leading with empathy and the quiet strength that had brought him this far. Through every challenge and triumph, he remembered that it all started with one small act of kindness, a decision to stop and help a stranger on the side of the road. As John watched Jake and Lily play in the center's bright, welcoming courtyard, he knew their lives, and the lives of so many others, had been forever changed. Kindness, he realized, truly has a ripple effect. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring tales of resilience, hope, and the power of human connection. Let's keep creating ripples of kindness together.